Hi, I'm Stephanie Coe, and I'm an instructional designer here at AU for CTRL, the Center for Teaching, Research, and Learning. We are proud to present another video in our College of Arts and Sciences Show and Tell series. The purpose of these videos is to show you the creative ways that professors have taught in the online space. Our hope is to inspire your teaching practice in ways that enhance student engagement and learning. I'm happy to introduce Professor Danielle Mysliwiec from the Department of Art. She has taught art at AU for 10 years, and she is also the program director of the Studio Art Department. Now I'm going to let Asante take it away. Hi, Asante.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Hi, Danielle, welcome.
Thank you, glad to be here.
Glad to have you. So my name is Asante Johnson, and once again, I am an instructional designer here in the College of Arts and Sciences. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with my colleague that I have worked very closely with, Danielle, who is over the Studio Arts Department here at AU. And she is going to introduce us to a phenomenal tool that I worked with her on this summer and introduced her to, and talk to us about how she's integrated this tool into her online course and how it has totally changed her teaching practice. So I'm super excited for you all to see what she has done with this tool. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and let Danielle take it away.
Thanks, Asante. So I'd just like to say that it was great working with you this summer. And Studio Art is one department that felt particularly challenged in going online. So much of what we do is about a tangible, tactile practice that's very much based in materials and very much based in demonstrations and seeing our students work in real time and actually helping them with that work face to face. And so there were many questions for us on how we were going to transition to the online space. Our number one question, or one of the biggest questions that I had for Asante, was what kind of tools are out there that we could use for online critique and that are high quality ways that students can post visual images online, and which might offer a space for both professor feedback, but also peer assessment and function as an online portfolio for students over the course of the semester. And Asante recommended a tool called Padlet, which I then piloted in a summer course that I was teaching online. And I really loved it and introduced it to both our full-time and adjunct faculty in the Studio Art Department. I would say the majority of people are now using Padlet this semester and having a really great experience with it.
All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and ask you a couple of questions around this tool Padlet so that we can get folks familiar with how you've used it in your course. So my first question for you is, how have you used Padlet to track the development of a student's work over the course of the semester? So you mentioned that you had piloted Padlet this summer. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
So one thing that I was looking for, and I think many faculty in Studio Art were looking for, was a continuous visual record of the development of a student's work over the course of the semester. So it's always nice to see a finished artwork, but as teachers, we're really interested in the development of the artwork over time. Is the student incorporating feedback from their peers and their professor to improve the work of art over time? And in the online space, how can we make students accountable for different stages of the artwork? Usually we're in the studio and we can physically watch our students working, but how do we create an accountability structure? And one of the things that Padlet allows is for students to upload, stage 1 of a drawing, stage 2 of a drawing, and get feedback from their peers and even write their own self-assessment about what challenges they're facing with that artwork, what content they're thinking about, and is their idea actually being realized in what they're making? Maybe they're having specific technical difficulties with the material. And so in having one place, instead of like individual images uploaded on different Blackboard assignments that are really hard to open and unpack and get a holistic view. Padlet allows us to have an actual timeline or scroll, and you can see how that student is developing over the course of the semester. So let me show you an example. Let me think of how to start talking. For example, this is what Padlet looks like on a screen. And you can see that I had a student who posted a 3-dimensional collage made from colored paper. And when you click on this, you can actually get a larger image or just an isolated image. So that's nice from a professor and peer perspective in terms of just being able to get good quality, high resolution images in the art department. And then from here, the students were practicing mixing and matching color and modeling 3-dimensional forms in 2-dimensional paintings. So you can see here, the student uploaded 50% of her painting. That was the assignment to complete, about half of the assignment. And, when I can see this, then I can offer feedback to the student, and then they can upload a final version of the painting here. And you can see below that then there's a space for peers to offer feedback on each other's work. And so one nice thing about Padlet is that the links are shared within the class. So everybody has links to everybody else's Padlets. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is in Molly Springfield's drawing class this semester. She has one Padlet, and the whole class uploads their work in progress in this one space. And that's a way for everyone to just go to one link on Padlet and be able to see what their peers are doing, and see their own work situated within the class. You can see here again, here's some professor feedback on the drawing that's being offered there. And so it's also a place where peers can see critique being modeled by the professor and then practicing that themselves. And they're also learning about how to document their work according to professional standards in the art world. And that's something that our students don't usually get. They don't usually have to photograph their work and think about color correction and lighting and presenting it in a way that is very formal. So students are also practicing that as a new skill. But here you can see the development of some early stage drawings and how these then develop over time into more complete works. And you can see there's a lot of student feedback happening here, as well as professor feedback. And so it's also become a place where the community can come together and like a discussion board on Blackboard, but with a really nice visual interface that's much better suited to studio art courses.
So I want to jump in right here.
Yeah.
This is just amazing to see how these images progress as the semester goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought up a good point about this kind of mirrors what folks use in the online discussion platforms, whether it be Blackboard or on Canvas. Now, I know from working with the faculty throughout the summer and throughout the fall semester that most people require their students, let's say, to post once a week on a discussion board. Have you guys set certain parameters, or did you find that once the artwork started to be posted, it was organic with how the students responded to each other?
I can't speak for every professor. I think people are using the platform differently. In my class over the summer, peer assessment is part of the grade at the final grade. It's part of the class participation grade. So I would actually assign 3 peers per person, and they would have to go on to Padlet, view those works, and then offer their feedback. So each student would get approximately 3 peer reviews of each artwork, and then they would get the professor feedback. And so what I would say is that one thing that's cool about Padlet that I would also like to point out is it offers an amazing array of the type of feedback that students can give. So for example, if I want to offer feedback on this final painting, I can do so in writing, but I can also click on comment. I don't know if this is still working, actually. Hold on. I can make a comment here, and I can actually choose to write something, or I can choose to do a video comment for the student. I could do a voice comment for the student, which adds tone to my critique, which is important in art. And I could do a screen recording, which I'll show you in a minute. Or I could even draw something or link to something on the internet. So if there's an artist that I want to show them that seems like they might be in dialogue with that work, or there's a historical trajectory that precedes what they're doing, I could link to that. So it's really nice that it has this broad array of types of feedback. And that way also, in terms of universal design, you could actually assign different types of peer review over the course of the semester. So if writing is not everyone's strong suit, they can also do verbal feedback or video feedback for their peers.
So basically, this tool has allowed you all to differentiate your instruction. So for our students that, have accommodations, everyone can access this website and be successful in your course. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. Yeah, I think there are. And I also think that it brings life to the feedback, or it can. So instead of simply having, writing, let me start over. Written feedback practices a certain type of skill in terms of offering criticism and using the vocabulary that we've been studying in class that's related to the techniques and conceptual problems that we're approaching. So it's one way for students to demonstrate their grasp of the vocabulary and putting that in the context of assessing an artwork. But it's also helpful in art where people are making work that is a form of self-expression and often feels very vulnerable, that tone of voice can bring a lot to the way that a student understands the feedback that they're getting, understands that it's coming from a supportive place. So I like that about it. And I can show you an example of a screen recorded crit. And that was not something I did previously to teaching online, but is something that I think I'll continue even when we go back to face-to-face instruction, because it's been a great new way that I can give students feedback on their artwork that feels much more personalized and is actually visual. And I'll show you how that's the case. In face-to-face classes, normally we have a group critique that's open to all of the students, and you might put up one student's work and have a group conversation about that. And then in place of that, in my asynchronous online course this summer, where a group critique was not possible, I found it very challenging to try to translate all of that into written feedback for my students without writing several pages per student and trying to describe which area of an artwork I was talking about and how to make it clear to the students. So I came across, or with the help of the instructional designers at AU, I thought about doing screen recording crits. And so what I've come to at this point is a process where I can pull up the students' artwork on my desktop, and I can pull up, in this case, a collage, a paper collage, and then a finished painting of that collage. And I can place them side by side on my screen and then actually screen record an audio critique for that student. And then the student gets this audio visual feedback for their artwork, which I think is much more engaging and authentic in terms of, again, them hearing my tone of voice, but also being able to use my cursor to point out different aspects of the artwork that I want to talk about specifically. So for example, you can see here that I'm critiquing this student's work, and you'll see my cursor moving around to point to specific areas in the art that I want to give feedback on.
Left-hand side, skew a bit to the blue-green. So bring some yellows into these to bring them back to being a little bit more yellow-green as they are in the original. This shape here looks a bit more orange in hue, though you've done a very nice job modulating a light and shadow illusion here. I also really appreciate the shift in color in the shadow that's being cast. Maybe reconsider this shadow, making it a little bit darker, or this a bit lighter, so that you match the kind of contrast that you see on this line here.
So that's an example of how nice it is to actually be able to show the student their work while I'm critiquing it, and not having them trying to translate my written feedback back to their artwork or back to the collage. It's just a more seamless, and quite frankly, it's also a private critique, which I always really like. It's not about the group and feeling really vulnerable in front of the group. It's a way for me to have a one-to-one relationship with the student through this form of feedback.
Have you found that students are more aware of what their peers are working on now that you guys are using Padlet online, opposed to when you were in the classroom? Because it seems like there's a lot of feedback going on here. I haven't seen some discussion postings in some of the online courses with this much feedback from peers. So what have you found? Are they more aware of what each other is doing now, or is it about the same?
I think that a big part of being in a studio art class, and one of the huge benefits, is that you can walk around the room and learn from 18 other people working on a similar challenge to you. So I think faculty had a lot of reservations and fears that that aspect of being in the classroom and learning from the person who's drawing right next to you, or painting right next to you, or making a similar sculpture project tasked with the same type of challenge, how those kind of real-time learning moments peer-to-peer would translate to an online situation where everybody is alone in their own room with their materials. I think Padlet has allowed us, because oftentimes, even in a synchronous online class, professors will ask students at the end of a working session to upload what they've just completed onto Padlet. And then during the synchronous session, the professor and the students can actually share their screens and actually show their work in real time, in progress. And that has become an analogous way to have that experience of looking at your neighbor's artwork and learning from it, and incorporating strategies that you see working in their work into your work. So
thank you for that. So it sounds to me like Padlet has really become an interactive tool, more so than you expected when we first started working with it this summer, because you've exceeded what I even suggested you do with it. So I'm really proud.
Yeah, you know, originally I think I was just thinking of it as a portfolio space.
Right. Yep. That's what we talked about.
Then as I had some experience at the beginning of the semester in my summer course was an asynchronous online course. And my fall semester course is synchronous online. And so I think I learned that using it in the synchronous space actually had even more possibilities in terms of connecting students in real time to what everybody was making. And, you know, there's the benefit of them learning from each other, but there's also the accountability structure in that of like, whoa, this student got this much done in this time period, and this student got this much done, and I better do my work during this because I'm going to have to upload what I finish on Padlet and share it with the class at the end of the time. So it's also been a way of making sure students are staying on task. In studio art, we have 5 contact hours per week with each of our courses, which is double the number of contact hours for most every other course on campus. So how do we use that time on Zoom and then take work breaks, but then hold students accountable for actually having done work during the non-Zoom time? And Padlet has been an essential tool in helping us with that.
So anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
I don't know. How do you guys think that went?
Great. I'm just excited about this because
really
people are
excited.
sleeping on this tool. This is not a new tool. I used this when I taught many years ago, but
Right.
it has progressed. We had none of these options. So if people can get on board with this, man.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. That was amazing to
Great.
see the wonderful work that you yourself and your colleagues have done with your students in the summer and this fall semester online. I know it's going to inspire some other folks within CAS to try this tool out.
Well,
And if anyone needs support, I am always available, Asante Johnson and Stephanie Coe. So please reach out to us. And once again, Danielle, thank you so much. You have been amazing, and you are blazing the trail for folks using some of these online tools that are available to them to enhance their students' learning. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you, and
Thank
we'll
you.
see everyone next time.
Thank you.
Sounds great. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.